Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I created for the Crazy Craft Obsession Rainbow Magic Hop. This month we're using the color purple, and we are also able to mix in some neutrals with that, but primarily it's a purple layout. For this layout, I started off with my favorite smooth white 120-pound cardstock, which I covered with some white Liquitex gesso, and I added some stamping using Staz On jet black ink and also some Tim Holtz stamps. Now I'm adding some modeling paste. I wanted to add a little texture to the background before I started adding some sprays. This stencil was from my creative scrapbook. It's a Vicky Bouton stencil, and I really love the pattern of this stencil. I put the stamping on the layout in a vertical line because I was going to apply the modeling paste and the majority of the sprays and the embellishments in a vertical line. But once I started adding the modeling paste, for some reason I put that on a diagonal going from the upper right hand corner to the lower left hand corner. Once the modeling paste was dry, I began to add some sprays. For this layout, I'm using Tattered Angels Glimmer Mists. I have a number of different colors of purple, and so I'm going to combine those in the background of this layout. So I use Bluebell. That's the first color that I put down. That's more of a lavender color. I also used Spooky Night. That's a little bit of a darker purple color. And I'm also going to use Purple Rain. That's going to be the darkest color. I don't have that on the layout yet. I wanted to expand the area that I was adding sprays to, so I went back in with that same stencil and some modeling paste. And by the way, this is Liquitex modeling paste. I extended the area that had the modeling paste, mainly to the left-hand side. I wanted to try to line up the stencil with the stenciling that's already down on the layout, and because the original modeling paste is already dry, it wasn't too hard to do that. I used the palette knife to clean up the edges of the modeling paste a little bit, and now I'm going up into the upper right-hand corner and just adding a little bit more modeling paste there as well. On the right-hand side, I don't think I was as successful at lining up the new stenciling with the old stenciling, but you really can't tell in the end. I think the photo mainly covers that up. Now that the second round of modeling paste has dried, I'm going back in with some more of those Tattered Angels Glimmer Mists. I'm using the packaging technique, which is probably my favorite way of adding color to a background. I'm adding a lot of water to the sprays on this layout because since purple is generally a darker color, I know that the background could get very dark very fast, and this helps to dilute the color a little bit. I don't mind having a dark background, but I want to make a conscious decision to have a darker background. So I thought that if I wanted it to be darker, I could slowly build up the layers of color rather than making it super dark right away. So I thought I would start a little bit lighter, and then I could always go darker if I wanted to. I sprayed some color right on the background, which is fine, but it does sometimes cause there to be a very fine layer of overspray, and you could see that I'm using some water and paper towel to clean that up a little bit. I think I like the packaging technique so much because you have a pretty good amount of control with it, but there's also kind of a cool effect that's created by smushing down the plastic. So that's really my tried and true method. And then I will mix using a paintbrush and spraying right on the backgrounds, but that's usually my go-to technique for applying color to my backgrounds. Now that the background is dry, I'm adding some purple splatters to it. I like the background to be dry because I like the splatters to be kind of crisp. You can also add splatters to a wet background. It'll just be a different effect. Depending on how wet the background is, the splatters will either spread out a little bit or they might just blend in with the background that's there. And that's fine too. There are all different ways to create a mixed media background. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying both on the same layout. I have that stamping and it's going vertically and my area of color is going horizontally, and I finally decided that I didn't want the stamping there anymore. Even though I love that stamp, the color was going one way, the stamping is going another way. I like to keep my compositions fairly simple. Even though I like to embellish a lot, I think in the most successful layouts that I've made, as soon as you look at the layout, you could see exactly what I'm trying to do with the shapes in the background. So I decided that I would have to cover this up, and I think this is a really good example of how easy it is to fix a mixed media background. I just got out some more gesso. I put down a couple of coats. Within 2 or 3 coats, you really couldn't see that stamping anymore. You can see the stamping on the area of purple sprays, but I knew that I was going to put my photo in that area. Anyway, that's the reason why I put the stamping there. I thought that my photo would sit on top of it, so in the end, you really don't see it at all. Something I love to do to my mixed media backgrounds, especially when they're watercolor sprays, is to sprinkle some water on top and then roll a paper towel over the background. That lifts up a little bit of the water and creates a really cool effect. This only works on watercolor sprays. If the background is made with paints, like acrylic paints, this won't work, but it works really well with these Tattered Angels Glimmer Mists, so I tend to do this all the time. It just creates a really cool water droplet impression on the area of color. I added some more sprays to the background. I did a little bit more cleaning up. Now I'm using my heat tool to dry the area of color that I just added. And I'm putting some splatters in that area too, so that it will match the rest of the layout. I also added some splatters to that same area so that it would match in with the rest of the area that's purple. And then I decided to just add some more splatters all over the layout. I really do like splatters a lot. I think it just adds a really cool effect. But I also did some cleaning up because I had a lot of stray color, especially on the upper part of the layout, and I wanted it to be a little whiter. That's very easy. When there's gesso on the background, the color comes right up. I decided that I would add another round of splatters of water to the background. I'm going to go back in with the stencil and add some modeling paste to just a couple of areas. By accident, I put a little bit too much modeling paste at first in that one area, so I tried to wipe it away and I dried it, and then I just added more spray on top. But once I had fixed that, I again went back in with my stencil and I was a little more careful to add just a very small amount of the modeling paste. I have the stencil lined up with the way that I originally had it on the background, and this just helps the modeling paste to look a little bit more dimensional. I also like the idea of adding some white areas back in. It just helps to highlight certain areas, which makes the background look a little bit more dimensional. I also like the idea of adding the color white in to break up the large areas of color. I don't want to use this technique on all of the background. I just want to pick a couple of spots and add a few highlights, and then also have spots where it's all purple. I believe that the modeling paste goes on looking very white, but I think as it dries, it doesn't look quite as white as it initially did. That might be my imagination, but that's what I think. So if you really want your modeling paste to be very white, you can add some acrylic paint to it, and that will help it to just be a brighter white that stays white even once it dries. I added a few more splatters to the background. I cleaned up the background a little bit more, and now I'm adding some white splatters. I use watered down white acrylic paint, and I add splatters to all of my mixed media layouts pretty much. So I was able to clean up some of that overspray in the background, but the background just didn't look clean enough. So I took a sponge and some more gesso, and now I'm gessoing all around the outside of the area of purple color. In some cases, I'm covering up some of the overspray, and in other cases, I am using the sponge technique to kind of soften the color, the purple color, so that it will blend nicely into the white background. I can tell you with 100% certainty that gesso does change as it dries. It gets a little bit more transparent. So with gesso, it works really well to put down a little bit, dry it. It dries very quickly, and then put down another coat if you're ever trying to cover something up. So despite the fact that I didn't like the other stamping that I did, that was really just because of the direction. I really love to add stamping to my backgrounds. I'm again using the Staz On Ink in jet black, and I pulled a number of stamps from my stash. I have a little Ziploc bag of all of the stamps that I absolutely love and I use all the time. That way I can find them easily. In that bag, I have a Prima stamp that I got from my creative scrapbook. That's a type stamp. I use that in several places. I also used a grid or kind of a mesh looking stamp. That's either a Tim Holtz or a Studio Calico stamp. And then for the dot stamp that I was just using, that is a Tim Holtz clear stamp. Now that I have some stamping on the background, I want to add some black splatters. This is watered down black acrylic paint. And now this is where my layout became a disaster and kind of a nightmare, to be honest with you. It ends up being okay in the end, but I wish I had done things a little differently. I cut about 1.5 to 2 inches off of each of the top and the bottom edges, thinking that I was going to distress the edges and put some pattern paper behind it. It did not look good at all. I was very unhappy with it. I was so upset with myself, thinking that I had ruined the layout, and I threw it in the trash and I tried something else. I tried to make several other backgrounds. Nothing came out good. Finally, my husband came down to my scrapbooking room and I was telling him about my dilemma, and he convinced me to try using this background again. So the next morning, I decided that I would use this Creative Memories trimmer. I had just used it for another layout. I scrap lifted a Mel Walked-In layout, and I had taken this out and used it for that layout, so I decided I would try using it for this layout as well. I found some purple paper. I couldn't find the color purple that I wanted, but I decided to settle on this paper. I cut 2 different shades of purple with the trimmer for the top and the bottom, and I attached them down, and it's not exactly what I wanted, but I do think that the page turned out okay in the end. What I could have done was I could have made a torn edge on the pattern paper and layered that on top of the background instead of cutting the background paper. But I decided to push forward with the layout and get it completed. So I did not have a lot of purple embellishments. I have a lot of purple Halloween embellishments. Maybe I should have made a Halloween page, but I had a couple. But I mainly had to use black and white embellishments since I didn't have enough purple to complete a whole layout. I had some purple flowers. I have those flowers layered on top of each other on top of the photo. I also found a cute flare button that said smile, so I have that to the lower left-hand side of the photo. And then the rest of the embellishments are neutrals. They're black and white embellishments that I got from a Felicity Jane embellishment pack and also a Heidi Swapp sticker pack that I had in my stash. I also used 2 thin strips of the black and white striped paper that I was originally going to use at the top and the bottom of the layout. Even though they're very small strips, they add a little something to the layout. The butterflies and the arrows that say enjoy this and super fun, those are the Heidi Swapp embellishments. I'm using some Glossy Accents to attach those down to the page, and also those Felicity Jane acetate pieces, the words of the title and the word yay. Those are held down with Glossy Accents as well. The ampersand in the title and also the tiny heart at the top of the photo, those are from a Prima collection called Hello Love. Those are puffy stickers. I thought those matched in well with the rest of the embellishments. And then I have a black tag and a white tag on the top of my photo. The white tag already had a little piece of string in it. I am going to add something to the black tag in a little while. I added one of the Felicity Jane acetate pieces to the bottom of the layout where there's the pattern paper. That's a little acetate bow. I used a We Are Memory Keepers circle paper punch. I punched out a little ring to go around the opening in the black tag. The purple flowers are made of felt, so I used some gel glue to attach those 2 flowers to each other. Now I'm using a set of Simple Stories snap stickers. These are clear black stickers, and I'm trying to embellish the page a little further. There were a number of arrows, so I picked out one arrow that I put to the left-hand side of the layout, and then I put another thinner one on the right-hand side of the layout. First I put a longer arrow, and then I thought that was a little too big for that spot, so I made it a little smaller with another sticker that was in that set. Those two very small heart stickers, those are also from that Simple Stories sticker pack. I added some black and white twine to the black tag. I made sure that I liked the way the bow looked before I cut the string short. I added an enamel dot, a dark purple enamel dot, to the center of those two flowers that I layered on top of each other. And now I'm adding some purple enamel dots to a number of the embellishments on the page. I added them to the little hearts, the butterflies, and the bow at the bottom of the page. I added one last black and white foam sticker to the white tag, and this layout is complete. I really wish I hadn't cut back the background on this layout, but I think that it turned out okay. I definitely learned a lesson, if nothing else. I'm really glad that my husband convinced me to salvage this background and try to use it and complete the layout. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I am greatly enjoying being a part of this Rainbow Magic Hop. Don't forget to look in the description box where you will find links to all of the other scrapbookers who are creating layouts in purple for Rainbow Magic this month. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.